This new game has real-life graphics.
It's hard to believe, but what you're seeing right now is not real-life footage from a camera. It's actually gameplay from an Unreal Engine 5 video game called Unrecord that's currently in development from a new independent studio. This video has taken the gaming internet by storm in the last few days. Many people blown away by the visual fidelity and others claiming that it's all fake or pre-rendered. So today I'm going to dive in and take a look at this, tell you a bit about the game and get to the bottom of it all. So the buzz for this actually started back in October 2022. Alexandre Spidler, who is creative director and lead programmer on this new project, released a video on Twitter saying simply, "I'm working on a body cam style game," with a few hashtags thrown in for good measure. And in that 45-second video, we see what looks like body cam footage of a person holding a gun, moving through a dilapidated environment and taking down a few baddies along the way. The quality of the clip is awful.
A few baddies. Jack Frags has got a thing for troublemakers, we see.
As it's on Twitter and only in 720p resolution. But I think that actually helps it in a way, and it would be easy at a glance to mistake this for real life footage. The environment was
not this. You can tell this is fucking fake.
Shared Unreal Engine
the
asset,
muzzle flash.
But the camera style mixed with
the new footage looks like creepy.
The animations made this look incredibly believable. So it sparked up some discussion, and then there was radio silence for months until we skipped to April
you can tell that doesn't look fucking
2023, real. A couple days ago, and Alexandre released a new video. This time it was on YouTube in 1440p 60 FPS quality, alongside a press release packed full of information and announcing the name of the game as Unrecord. And as you can see, this has to be one of the most realistic looking games ever. There's no doubt about it for me. And I think there's a few reasons for that. The main reason is that this isn't simulating what seeing through humans' eyes would look like. In fact, it's simulating what body camera footage looks like. The barrel distortion in the corners as if it were a lens, the wide field of view, the chromatic aberration, the shakiness, even the position of the gun in the hands. It's very unconventional for a first-person shooter, of course, but
it looks like real body cam footage.
The excellent animation of the hands and the pistol, and you end up with something very convincing. Unreal Engine 5 is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here as well, adding in accurate lighting, textures, and what appears to be ray tracing on the puddles and shiny surfaces. You may have noticed too that the faces of the combatants are pixelated and blurred. This is obviously a choice that the developers have made, and it leans into the body cam narrative. But more importantly, it solves a big problem that might make the game look less realistic, because as human beings, we're all very good at noticing when a face looks weird or fake, and video game faces, as much as they have improved, are still not photorealistic, especially when animated. But in this case, that is irrelevant because you can't see the faces, and that helps sell the overall image. Still, many people online were skeptical about this game and didn't believe that the video was real, rather a pre-rendered sequence, or in fact a real video that's been filtered or doctored in some way. And so to prove it, the lead developer posted a new video showing the game running in the Unreal Engine editor. He flies a free camera around the environment to begin, and then he hits play and drops into the game, controlling the character, checking the pistol with the same animations, looking around and firing it off in different directions. He then checking the pistol with the same animation.
Exposure changing when you look up at the sky versus
play and drops into the game, controlling the character.
It behaves dude, it's a little, it almost is uncomfortable how real this looks. People have made points in the past about how compare video games from 10 years ago to video games now, or when video games first came out, right? It was traditionally Pong, right? Where it's just that little dot going around and you try to make sure it doesn't fall. Or a game like Breakout, right? Those really old arcade style games, or Pac-Man. Think about how far we've come. Nobody would say that any video games now look indistinguishable from reality. This, however, is the very first game that I've ever seen where I was scrolling and saw this on Twitter and I legitimately didn't know whether or not this was real or not. And that's the fact that we're getting to that area now with Unreal Engine 5 shit, because we saw what that was able to do for Fortnite. Just overall visual fidelity, these game engines are going to get better and better. We're finally starting to witness that happening for games that care about looking visually realistic. I'll talk about another point that I want to make later on in the video, but we'll just play the rest of this for now.
The pistol with the same animations, looking around around and firing it off in different directions. He then flies to another area from the latest video and does the same thing again in a different fashion, checks his ammo and goes into free cam again. So it does appear that this is in fact real, and this new video put many doubts to bed, but still a lot of questions remained. So what is Unrecord then? What is this game? Well, as I mentioned, there was a press package that went out, and I'll take you through the key details now. At the moment, you can only wishlist the game on Steam with an unannounced release date, but it is not expected to be released this year. In fact, the developers are still seeking publishers and investors to support the studio. I'm sure that they'll have a lot more interest now. The game is pitched as a tactical first-person shooter where players can expect an immersive and narrative experience featuring complex dialogues, innovative gameplay mechanics, tough moral dilemmas, and a unique shooting system. The storyline can be compared to a detective novel or a thriller, where the player will have to investigate several criminal cases and confront a diverse cast of characters. The game's plot and presentation will be central to the gameplay experience, and players can anticipate a range of gameplay sequences as well as numerous plot twists. In terms of the moment-to-moment gameplay, Unrecord features an original aiming system, and they claim this as a free aiming system with authentic aim down sight and unrestricted hand movement.
You probably need a 4090 to run this at high FPS. True.
And having watched the footage several times, this is the biggest question mark for me, because usually in a first-person shooter game, the weapon and hands are in the bottom right, and when you press a button to aim, everything moves to the center of the screen nice and steady, so you can use the sight of the weapon to effectively aim at what's in the middle of your screen. But Unrecord is doing things a bit differently with the shaky movement and animation, so it seems it would be quite difficult to aim precisely at something. However, I am super interested to get hands-on with this and get a feel for exactly how it works, because this is at least something different that we haven't really seen before, or I haven't anyway. But perhaps there will be an element of aim assist or a generous hit zone if you're roughly in the correct position with your gun when aiming at a target. So I would love to hear more about how that's going to function. Moving on, the game features die and retry combat with a technical and minimalist approach. No room for errors. It's up to you to develop your own tactics. I assume there's going to be gear that you can use too, like flashbangs and grenades. You'll also be making dialogue choices that impact your experience even during combat. We see this a couple times in the video, multiple choices at one point, so perhaps what you choose there can potentially de-escalate or aggravate a situation, even offer multiple choices and potentially side objectives or ways to complete a mission. The devs have responded to a few interesting frequently asked questions too, one of them related to motion sickness for people who are prone to that but might want to play this game. They said that they're working on implementing options and settings to adjust camera movement, effects, and accessibility options to make the game more comfortable to play for all. Naturally, console gamers have been keen to know if this game...
I didn't even really think about that because, yeah, playing this for long periods of time would probably be pretty
will be released on Xbox or PlayStation. Their reply was that currently the game runs smoothly with both keyboard and controller. We don't see any issues porting to consoles. However, we haven't yet decided on the specific platforms and consoles for release, but we will keep you updated during development. Unfortunately, it is not a VR game, so I guess that there were a lot of people who, when they saw this for the first time, went, oh, I'd love to try that on my Oculus or my PlayStation VR 2. It's not a VR game, so I don't think it's going to...
Yeah, and that's just because the visual fidelity is probably too high, and most VR headsets can't really handle that right now, but again, man, that's only a matter of time.
Come to those platforms. And then finally, in regards to optimization, surely you need a monster PC to play the game looking this good, right? Well, in the FAQ, their response was that we see no issue in following an optimization process, and we cannot guarantee a perfectly optimized game, as it would be presumptuous given the challenges that ambitious studios face today, but we will meet the expectations of gamers and deliver accordingly. However, it is possible that older generations of PCs may not have sufficient performance to fully enjoy a next-gen game powered by Unreal Engine 5. So it might be time to upgrade your PC if you have the luxury of being able to do that. And that's about all for today, folks. Do let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments below. And
okay, so real quick, I just want to make a point. Here's the point that I want to make about a video game like this. I want to start off by saying that I don't like putting any limitations on anybody's creative freedom. And I think if somebody wants to publish a game like this, they totally should. However, I think there is a conversation to be had about not only the realism that we're starting to achieve when it comes to video games like this, but also video games specifically in this genre. I've never seen any body cam style shooters like this, but I do think we have to ask some uncomfortable questions about the morality of a game like this. And I even hesitate saying this, but like, a lot of this perspective that I have is just coming from the current culture that we live in, especially in the United States, with how scary and prevalent mass shootings seem to be. This footage from this game looks pretty indistinguishable from body cam footage that you would see from an actual police officer clearing a school. I don't think there's an issue with video games getting super realistic, even shooter games, but I think specifically a game like this through body cam footage, especially with the faces being blurred, I know there's something a little uncomfortable about it. Again, I don't think they should. It's not a question of like, maybe they shouldn't release this game. What I worry though is that we're getting into this territory, and I think this gives lawmakers and people in power a much bigger and more defensible argument when it comes to like video games are affecting kids and it's desensitizing them to violence, and video games are the reason that we're seeing an uptick in like the amount of mass shootings that are happening. When you get games that look like this, dude, I mean, there is something a little bit, when you start to have that perspective, there's something a little stomach turning about this. And again, I know that's a kind of like cynical view to have, and I don't mean to shit on anybody's excitement for this game because I'm excited about it and I'm definitely going to check it out. But I think there's an interesting conversation to be had about that. I know Trainwrecks also kind of touched on this in a tweet. I'm going to pull it up. Trainwrecks responds and goes, "I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but this level of realism in video games should be heavily moderated in shooters for anyone under a certain age. I hope parents do their job. This level of realism for shooting and killing makes me feel uncomfortable, as if I'm watching a real leak from a military or police operation. The clear distinction between real and fake is necessary, but this level of realism, in my opinion, gives real credibility to the nonsense politicians that have been spewing for years about video games conditioning young people to lose a sense of empathy towards violent tendencies or situations." And I think that is a valid argument. So yeah, guys, that's really my only take on this. Again, no issue with realism in video games, no issue with realism in shooters, and I personally think the less regulation, the better. It looks like Call of Duty, but a little bit more realistic. If it didn't look real, but almost. Yeah, but it's not just Call of Duty look more realistic, because Call of Duty, you're doing like military style missions, right? There's something eerie about body cam footage, because really anytime body cam footage is released, it's released because there was some really unfortunate altercation between police and civilians, or police clearing a school after a mass shooting. Like, I guess just because of like the current world that we live in, especially people who live in the US, for me at least, there's something a little eerie about watching this, especially as he's going through this area and like, it just looks so fucking real. And he's like just killing people, and then like the faces are being blurred too. Like, it just all lines up so much with that footage that you see going around on Twitter. Yeah, so anyways, I think the conversation is interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that all starts to evolve, because man, once video games get too realistic, dude, once we start to literally once it becomes the standard to not be able to tell between real life and video game footage, that's going to get to a creepy place. And like the fact that like AI music now and all that shit, fucking wild, man. Anyways, that's my take on this. Let me know what you guys think in those comments down below.